Rugby with Huw Griffin.
Welcome to Huw Griffin. It's time to talk to him about what's going to happen this weekend. And we thought we'd focus on the Welsh team, all descending on South Africa this weekend, all four of them actually. And I thought it'd be a good idea to get a better understanding who they are, where they fit in, and what the history and the likes are. So welcome back, Huw. And how was your trip to France?
Good afternoon, Edinburgh. My trip to France was absolutely superb. I couldn't recommend highly enough if anybody does get the opportunity to go to France to take in some rugby. I know it's more easy for me being based in the UK than it is for some of our viewers and listeners who are in South Africa. But if the opportunity does arise, it's not like club rugby anywhere else in the world, I don't think.
Well, talking about that, you attended two matches and obviously you attended the big one as well. Tell me about that one.
So I attended Toulon versus Toulouse at the Stade Velodrome in Marseille, 67,000 fans there, passionate fans. And in terms of a show, in terms of an occasion, I'd be well beyond any club game that I've ever been to by a long way. And, it's between that and Wales home matches in Cardiff. I'm trying to decide which one was the best. So, an incredible stadium as well. And just the amount of effort, the amount of money that they must have spent on it as well. Just fantastic. Like I said, what if you enjoy attending sports events, there's nothing that you could like better.
Next week, we're going to be doing a bit of a behind the scenes thing for this France trip that you did, so we can understand that a bit better. And I thought, you were there, you experienced it yourself. Nice thing to talk about, nice topic. So looking forward to that. But as usual, let's talk about your shirt of the week. And it's a new one. I haven't seen that one before.
It is a new one. I only bought it on Friday at Provence. This is a Provence polo shirt, so it's loosely based on their home shirt. So it's black. They play in black. They are Les Noirs. And the stripes, the orange and red stripes, are the color of Provence. So Provence is like a region of France, the history of France. It didn't all used to be one country. It's kind of evolved over time and things. So Provence is an area of France, and their flag is orange and red stripes. So that's the story behind that. There is another very cool story about why this appears to be a New Zealand style thing with a fern and black.
Mm.
It's not a fern, it's an olive tree. So it's just a coincidence, and there is a cool origin story about why they play in black. Basically, the club couldn't afford to buy kits for all the players, so they just told everybody, just turn up wearing black. Bring your own kits, as long as it's black, we'll play on. And they've been Le Noir ever since.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to that one. Just put into perspective a little bit, Provence, never heard of them before. What are they like compared to a South African team? Are they like the Bulls or maybe like the Free State
Uh,
or something like that?
I've no idea. What are they like? They've got George North plays for them.
Mm.
Tom Francis plays for them. Those two both, of course, started against the Springboks in the 2019 semi-final. Jimmy Gopperth plays for them as well. There's a blast from the past. So they are, I don't know what exactly their style of play is. I guess the thing about French teams is I saw them at home, and Provence are 15 out of 15 at home this season. French teams don't lose at home. So maybe that's not a fair way to judge them.
Now, I'm talking more about, how big they are. Are they like one of the top teams? What league do they play in?
They play in the Pro D2, which is the second division,
Mm.
and they are one of the biggest teams in the second division. They are one of the bigger teams. Probably Brive and Grenoble are the two biggest teams in the Pro D2, and then Provence are kind of after that. They probably, in terms of their budget, I think they're in the top three or four.
All right. So next week, a deep dive into the French rugby culture by Huw Griffin himself, having been there. So I'm looking forward to that. But let's dive into the Welsh culture this week. Like I said, it feels like we've been invaded by the Welsh. Four teams in the country, all four of them actually, for the time being. Maybe they aren't not going to be four anymore. We'll talk about that just now. But to put into context, who are these teams? Starting with who's the first game up? It's Cardiff versus the Stormers. Cardiff were fifth in the log until last weekend. Now they've slipped back a bit, but they're still in the mathematical chance. Tell me about Cardiff. We know they've had some financial problems. Where do they come from? What are the background, and what can you expect from them this weekend?
So Cardiff are the capital region, so they're based out of Cardiff City. Cardiff is the capital of Wales, and they play in blue and black. So their nickname is the Blue and Blacks. Is very creative that way. And they are the most attended Welsh region. Obviously, Cardiff is the most populous area in Wales. and they get the biggest attendances. It's normal to get over 10,000 fans there for them in Cardiff, which is not necessarily the case for any of the other Welsh regions. They have a longer heritage, so without I don't want to go into all this, especially because some of it's a bit controversial, but Wales went to a regional structure in 2003 from the old clubs. So they were in what was an ancestor of the URC, which was the Celtic League. Prior to 2003, there were 9 Welsh teams in it. And even before that, there were more than that. And that was all like towns and cities in Wales and things. They went to a regional structure, whereas it's a bit like the franchises in South Africa, where they went to 4. Well, originally there was 5 for one season, but then they went down to 4, representing areas. And Cardiff is seen as a key kind of strategic one of you can't not have rugby in the capital city. Although then the downside of that is downside, is that the right word? Kind of the controversial side of that, if you like, is that Cardiff RFC, Cardiff Rugby Football Club, existed before the region, and in the minds of many people, it's the same thing. So Cardiff never became a region; they just stayed as the old club, which is true for one of the other regions as well, which I'll talk about in a minute. So that's something that people get touchy about whether they're a region or a club. But I'd say let's steer clear of that conversation.
I wouldn't know. Sorry, don't want to step on any toes. What was interesting to me is that with 2 former Blue Bulls playing against the Bulls last weekend for Cardiff, Johan Mulder and Tinus de Beer, 9 and 10. How did that happen? Do they recruit players from overseas? I mean, I thought they had no money. How can they afford to get players from overseas?
Welsh regions will always recruit players from overseas. Normally Curry Cup is the kind of level that we'd be shopping at due to the finances that are available. And our Welsh region's a destination club for these players, maybe arguably not. So Tinus de Beer, actually, it was funny because a couple of seasons ago, Cardiff didn't have a fly half on the books, which again is another bigger conversation as to why that happened. But they needed to sign a fly half, and they scouted Tinus de Beer from, I think he was either playing for Griquas or Pumas at the time.
Pumas, yeah.
And they wanted to sign him, and the WRU blocked it because the WRU didn't want him blocking the path of another Welsh player to play 10. And Cardiff had to kind of petition, and there was a long drawn out process, and eventually the transfer was agreed. And he was excellent in his last season, the 23-24 season. Tinus de Beer was absolutely superb for Cardiff. He was probably the best fly half in Wales. And then this season, Cardiff signed Callum Sheedy from Bristol, who was a Welsh international, and brought him back. And again, there's probably opinion divided about whether Sheedy's actually been any better than De Beer was. De Beer is now going to join the Dragons next season. But all I can say is that I highly rate De Beer. I think he's been very good for Cardiff when he's played. He puts the ball in the right areas. He bosses them around the pitch. He's not afraid to make a tackle. And then Johan Mulder, I haven't seen much more of, but I understand that he's got better as the season has gone on. So yeah, so it's 2 probably successful signings for Cardiff there from South Africa.
Interesting about Cardiff is that their coach was a stand-in coach for Wales when Gatland resigned. Matt Sherratt, isn't it? And tell me about that.
Yeah, so Gatland's jumped, always pushed after Italy, losing to Italy in the Six Nations. And the WR needed a coach at a short notice. And the funny thing about Cardiff is Cardiff literally share a wall with the Principality Stadium where the Wales national team play. So you can just imagine Abby Tierney, the CEO, she takes the phone call from Warren Gatland and says that he's not going to be a coach anymore. And she looks around and goes, God, where am I going to get a coach for a international side at this time of night? Looks out of the window, sees Matt Sherratt on the training pitch in Cardiff. He's wearing a hat and a dry robe and holding a clipboard. And she's thinking, he looks like a coach. Maybe we can get him. And that's kind of what happened. It's actually looking like he's going to be the interim coach for the tour of Japan this summer as well, because Wales still haven't sorted out who's going to be their long-term head coach. So, yeah, I don't think anybody. He's quite likable, is Matt Sherratt. Everybody likes him. He plays attacking, attractive rugby. The Cardiff are very good at scoring tries. Not necessarily always amazing at preventing them, but good at scoring them. And yeah, he's got a rapport with the fans. He's promoted a lot of local talent, and He's just honest and a genuine guy, and he is popular amongst the fan base.
You warned me last week that Cardiff always scores 4 tries, most often scores 4 tries, or score 4 tries and get a bonus point. And it so nearly came through against the Bulls right at the end there again. I thought, oh gee, you jinxed this one. We managed to keep them out for the fourth try, but I mean that was a bit of a comeback. Why do you think that was? It was because they were a good team, or do you think the Bulls just took their foot off the accelerator as they normally do towards the end of the game?
Well, like you said, the Bulls normally do take their foot off the accelerator. Cardiff just know how to do it. They are excellent off first phase. If I try and pull up the stats here for try scoring, they score a lot of tries off first phase. It's gone down a little bit since the beginning of the season, but they've just got good processes. They've got good hands. It's something they work on. It's a thing with teams. It's talk about what you work on, and it seems clear to me that Cardiff have worked more on their attack than maybe in other areas of the game, and they've just been repeatedly be able to do it. They've got good backs. They've got at club level standard anyway, decent pace. And they play with multiple playmakers. Like they've got Ben Thomas at 12, who is capable of doing a job at 10. I don't think it's his best position by any means, but they just have processes, they have set plays, they've got a big repertoire of moves that they can use on you, and they never lose the belief that they're going to score a fourth try. So it's just their thing this season is that they can score reliably and repeatedly. So away from home, Cardiff have scored 4 try bonus points this season, which is one every other game. And then at home, they've scored 5. So 9 try bonus points out of 17 games is not to be not
Mm.
not to be sniffed at. It's over a 50% win rate. It's why they were in playoff contention much longer than they should have been if you look at their win-loss record and their points difference, which isn't amazing.
Yeah, points difference is where the men are separated from the boys. That's what Harry uses for the Harry index as well. Right. So last weekend against the Bulls, they were sort of hammered in the first half, and then they basically won the second half. Let's be honest, against a very structured, I don't want to say conservative Bulls team, but very scrum oriented, and then with a bit of a dangerous backline. Seeming to be firing on all cylinders lately towards the end of the season, which is a good thing for the Bulls supporters like I am. Now, coming up against the Stormers, Sasha's back, Damien Willems is back, lots of talent, Goof Troop kind of a team that you love to offload, and like Harry calls them Goof Troop, he calls it, he's a Stormer supporter, but, how would they fare against a more adventurous team, let's call it that, like the Stormers? What do you expect from this game?
I think it will suit them. I think there'll be tries scored in this game. Stormers so far have scored 61 tries this season, Cardiff 59. So only 2 tries difference.
Hmm.
So I think that doesn't take into account the fact that Stormers have improved a lot lately since Sasha came back. Is basically the reason that they're better. But I can see this being a high scoring game. I can see both teams getting over the 30-point mark. I think they'll suit each other. I think they'll suit each other is how I would put this.
Interestingly enough, the Stormers' defense seems to be a bit on shaky ground. And I was talking about to some of the other guys I talked to on this channel. Norman Laker, who's the Stormers' defensive coach, was actually on the radar to be the England defensive coach. What's gone wrong at the Stormers with their defense, do you think, looking from the outside?
It's difficult to tell. I've always gotten the sense with the Stormers that they relied, and as we're seeing with Sasha at the moment, so much on their top players and moments of magic. Like I remember earlier this season, it would literally just be give the ball to Manny Lebok and hope that he does something.
Mm.
So it's okay to do that in attack. It's more difficult to do that in defense. So, look, defensive stats are extremely difficult to interpret because you can't miss a tackle you were never there to make. But I would question how ingrained their systems are and how much they understand all their roles. So
Mm.
they've got over 1 in 3 22 entries against them results in a try being conceded, and they average 8.5 to call it 9 tries a game. So they're averaging conceding 3 tries a game. If I have a look here, they've conceded on average, Stormers, 53 in 17 games. Yeah, 3-ish. So yeah, so I just don't think that there's much repeatability in what the Stormers do. I think it's all very off the cuff, which is fantastic when you've got players of the supreme talent of Libok, Sasha, and Willemse. It's harder to be off the cuff in defence.
Well, the Stormers were sort of out of the running, and now they've come storming back towards the end of the season, which is typically what they do. And I called it. I said it's going to happen, and it is happening. But how much do you think that's got to do with the fact that they've had the chance to rest, having fallen out of the Champions and the Challenge Cup, not having to play, not having to travel, getting the players rested and everything else? The only drawback they've had is that Neerling Fischer was banned for some obscure reason for 4 games, which is an absolute travesty. But the players are well rested. Talking about the long season and everything else, do you think that played a role in their resurgence?
Yeah, look, the URC format means that it's really after the Six Nations that it really gets going. Like everything then until there is just kind of feeling your place. But we've seen teams time and time again go on a run post Six Nations and lift the title from there even. So I think having players back fit and available has helped the Stormers a lot. Like if you look back now on the games against the Bulls and the teams that they were putting out then, you're like, wow, okay, that was a lot different to what we're currently seeing. And having 4 home fixtures in a row helps as well.
Right, sir. Your prediction for that game? Can Cardiff pull off a surprise?
I'm going to go for 36-34 to Stormers.
That close.
I think maybe Cardiff with a try right in overtime to make it look closer than it is. But I think Stormers will win, but I see both teams scoring at least 4 tries.
Stormers put away Benetton, 56-5 or something
Benetton are
ridiculous.
very up and down. They're up and down.
But I mean, they just look at last week, they beat Glasgow. See, that's the thing now. Mercurial teams, either good or bad. Never is something in between. So, yeah, I think the Stormers are going to win this game comfortably. Honestly think so. Let's see who's right. Right, the next game up is going to be the Bulls against the Dragons. Now, the Dragons are last on the log. They've barely scrapped. I don't think they've got double points, do they? No, they don't. They don't have that. They never got into double digits on the log. Why are they so bad? I mean, now you just said Martinez de Beer is now going to the Dragons as well. Why is he jumping ship, or isn't this a sinking ship as well? What's going on with the Dragons?
Well, I think Martinez de Beer just hasn't been opted for by Cardiff, which I think some people would say was a mistake. That's up to different people's opinion. What's gone on with the Dragons? So the Dragons have all pretty much always been the weakest Welsh region. Yes, they finished 3rd in their first season of existing back in 03-04, but yeah, they've traditionally been the poorest team, although their owners at the moment keep talking about how stable they are off the pitch, which their supporters now will start going, that's great. Could we start seeing some improvement on the pitch? And they have made some signings for next season that I do think will improve them. But obviously there's a lot of improvement to be had. So the Dragons went bust a few years ago, went into the WRU ownership, which is what is with Cardiff at the moment. That didn't go particularly well. Bernard Jackman was their coach.
Oh,
That was bad vibes.
Jackers.
Yeah. He was their coach for a few years. That didn't work out great. Then they had Dean Ryan was their coach. That worked out even worse. And I think, there's a lot of chat in Wales when you hear people talking about us going down to 3 regions. The Dragons is always the one that people talk about they should get rid of. And they talk about, is there enough talent? Is there enough money in Wales? Look, we've been told that the Dragons is the most stable financially in Wales off the pitch. And Gwent, which is the area of Wales that they are based in, has the most rugby clubs per square mile of, at least in Wales, and maybe even anywhere in the world, because Wales is extremely dense for rugby clubs for the size of the country. So there's rugby players there. I just don't think that the Dragons have ever got it right on 2 things. I think they've too often decided to sign a big name who is over the hill rather than invest smartly. I don't think they've ever gotten recruitment particularly right on the player side, and they've definitely never gotten recruitment right on the management side and the coaches side. So this season they started the season being coached by Di Flanagan, and he did the whole of the previous season without a defence coach. They just didn't have a defence coach. Then the following season, this season, they hired a defence coach in Philo Tiatia, and he came in and they worked together for the first block, and then they got rid of Di Flanagan and promoted Philo Tiatia. The irony being that they made a big song and dance about how the fact they brought in Tiatia to be a defence coach to support Di Flanagan, and then they got rid of Di Flanagan. So now Tiatia is just in the position that Flanagan was in. And I think there's a consensus around a lot of fans in Wales, Dragons fans and those outside the Dragons, that getting rid of Di Flanagan was a mistake, and they're not sure why they did that. So it's odd. I think for me, if you're the Dragons, you need to make coaching your USP. If you look at someone like Brighton in the English Premiership in football, they say like, we're not your final destination. You come here, you get better, you get signed by a big club. I think the Dragons need to do that. They need to say, look, you might not win silverware here, but if you're a young player, you'll come here, we'll make you better, you'll impress people, and you'll get a big contract somewhere else. And then they invest the majority of the money in the coaching. That's what I would do if I was in charge of the Dragons. Other people might do something different. That's just my opinion.
Sounds like the Lions. Come to the Lions. We'll give you an exposure, and then you can get signed by the Sharks or the Bulls or the Stormers or somebody like that. All right, so now coming up against the Bulls, like I said earlier, rampant Bulls at the moment. Having won against Munster and the defending champions Glasgow Warriors overseas, sort of settling the score for that final that went so disastrously wrong at Loftus. And when you talked about that game at Toulon versus Toulouse, about the atmosphere, everything, I was thinking, I have to ask you, you've obviously never been to Loftus before.
No, I have never been to Loftus before. I don't mind, but I don't mind admitting that. I would love to go, but Loftus only 50,000 seats, and I was at one with 67,000 people.
Yeah,
there,
but
so.
it is some loudest crowd probably, especially when yeah, let's leave it at there. Certain things start flowing. It gets very raucous and loud. Anyway, I was just kidding. The Bulls are in excellent form, like I said. I wonder what team they're going to be selecting. We're not sure yet. This is recorded early in the week, so we don't know what the team's going to be look like when it gets announced on Friday morning. But I mean, I suppose Jake's not going to go for a full strength team. He's going to save some of his players, but probably not a complete B team. Maybe a bit more of a mixture to make sure everybody keeps sharp, because there's a week off after this as well. Do you think the Bulls will just demolish the Dragons and sort of rub salt in their wounds, or do you think the Dragons have any chance of saving some sort of face at the end of the season?
I think probably the Dragons trip to Cape Town went kind of a bit better than people were thinking, because I heard Dragons fans talking about it could be 60, 70 points in both games. Look, on paper, it should be not fun to watch this game. On paper, it should be a complete massacre by the Bulls of the Dragons. It should have been that last season. If you remember last season up in Rodney Parade, the Bulls went there, and it was they just didn't seem to have their mind focused on it. I think they had Leinster the following week, and they seemed to have one eye on that, and it was not a convincing performance. But I think Jake's going to have to earn his money, because there's a week off, as you said, after this game. So do you want to rest players, or because they're just going to get a rest week anyway? And which players do you want having 2 weeks off and stuff? So that's where he's got to earn the money. On paper, like I said, this should be a very, very one-sided game. What does respectability look like this from the Dragons? Keep it under 50, score 3 tries, probably, is what respectability looks like from a Dragons point of view.
I love the stats you give. How many tries have they scored on average? I mean, they said lost 16 out of 17 games, minus 262 points difference. That is just shambolic, it's diabolical.
So the Dragons have scored 40 tries this season, which is actually more than Zebra above them, but they conceded 83, which is a lot more than anybody else. A lot more. So if I can say nothing else, a Dragons player to look out for, Huw Anderson, the fullback, if he plays, he's a shining light, probably their best player this season. He's got pace, he's got vision. If there's any Dragons player who's going to do something on his own, it's him.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to be a disaster for Dragons, I suppose. Let's call it a massacre. Next up is the Lions. I just talked to them about versus the Ospreys. Now, the Ospreys, they didn't have a disaster season. They're 11th on the log at the moment. It's not that bad. I mean, they're out of the running, but still better than expected. I actually met Toby Booth, the previous coach, when he was here for the press conference. Didn't speak to him in the press conference. I made him talk to us there. I was quite impressed with him. I liked him, and he was let go. Did he leave? What happened to him?
So it's interesting you say they're better than expected because they got into the playoffs last season. So you'd say they've gone backwards since last season.
Mm.
But Ospreys and expectations are a touchy subject because if you talk to their fans, it's a miracle that they win as a single game, even though they probably have the strongest squad in Wales. They, uh, what happened with Toby Booth? He was in negotiations to extend his contract, and for whatever reason, those negotiations broke down. And he was much beloved by the fans. And like you said, you were impressed with him. The fans were impressed with him. I think he's a very good talker, and he knows how to get people on side and buy into what he's saying. And for whatever reason, him and the upper management of the Ospreys couldn't come to a deal. And it was announced before this season that uh, he was to leave. And from that moment on, it was bad vibes at the Ospreys between Toby Booth and the players and the media, and it just felt off. So it came to halfway through the season and they parted ways. I think it was after they lost away to Zebra, and Mark Jones was promoted. Mark Jones, his backstory is he played for the Wales, he played for the Scarlets, he coached up in North Wales, he coached Wales under 20s, and then he was assistant coach of the Ospreys and got promoted to the head coach role, which was the long-term plan anyway. So they just brought that forward 6 months. And there was an immediate bounce. They immediately got better. They immediately started playing a lot more attractive rugby, scoring a lot more tries. I think they beat Benetton like 43-0 or something. Benetton were terrible in that game, but still, they went out there and they put a lot of points on them. And it seems like a big turnaround. In the last few games, they seem to have reverted to their beginning of season form in terms of a, an attack that's slow and yet overcomplicated, really struggling to score tries, and just losing something about them. Now, the Ospreys' identity is all about the pack and always has been. So, for people who don't know, Ospreys are the most successful Welsh region in terms of league titles. Back in the day, in the late noughties, early 2010s, Ospreys won 4 league titles. They basically won the league every other year. And they had a team that was known as the Galacticos. Tommy Bowe is a player that people might know, used to play for Ireland. He played on the wing for them. They had Jerry Collins. Justin Marshall also played for the Ospreys. So they were a big and very good team. Shane Williams played for the Ospreys. They had the majority of the Welsh national team as well. But their identity has always been pack first, always been scrum first, always driving maul first. It is their thing. They're all about a big pack of forwards, and Toby Booth really lent into that identity. But I think by the time it got to the point where Toby Booth is leaving, it was kind of we need to see some evolution now. It wasn't always great to watch. They were winning games, they were scraping wins against average opposition, and Toby Booth could turn around and say, "We're winning, we're still winning," and it's true, they were. So his game plan was clearly working. However, it just wasn't great to watch. So that's kind of the Ospreys' DNA. So in terms of this game against the Lions, look, the Lions aren't great. Let's be honest. Are they above the Lions in the table? I think they are.
Yeah, the Lions are
So
13th and the Ospreys are 11th.
so if you go by that logic, they're the favourites because they're higher in the league. They've won more games, I think. They've won the same number of games. They have scored more tries. So the Ospreys, therefore, you could argue would be the favourites in this game. They've beaten the Lions away from home before as well.
Yeah, the Lions are dismal. I mean, they started to feel like a house on fire, and now again lost last weekend at home. I mean, lots of calls for the head coach to be sacked, and entire coaching team to be sacked. Yeah, home advantage at Ellis Park, at altitude, all those nice things. It doesn't mean anything. Nobody gets called out by the altitude anymore, I don't think. Yeah, Ospreys. You mentioned they have the best team on paper in Wales. What does that mean? Who's in there that we should know or should look out for?
The best squads. I think they've got the deepest squad. You can take a debate, particularly in certain areas of do the Scarlets or Cardiff have better players in certain positions. But I think in terms of depth of squad, they're the strongest. Up until a couple of years ago, they had 7 British and Irish Lions in their squad. So they now a lot of those retired and moved on. But still, I think in my opinion, the Ospreys kind of 1 to 36, maybe not 1 to 23, but 1 to 36 is the strongest in Wales. But if nowhere else, just in the forwards, their pack is a lot more menacing than Cardiff or the Scarlets once you get to second and third choice. Whereas Cardiff and Scarlets, after you get past first and a half choice, it can start looking a little bit thin in areas.
All right, so you reckon Ospreys are the favourites? What's your prediction?
Probably I would go, I don't know. I think the Lions suit the Ospreys. So it could be similar to the Scarlets, I think. It could be similar to the Scarlets. I think I can see the Ospreys breaking 30 but I can see them letting the Lions score a few more. So maybe 31-25 to the Ospreys.
Okay. Right, then the last match of the weekend, South African teams anyway, is your team, the Scarlets. You just talked about them against the Sharks. Now, the Sharks, again, a team on paper that should annihilate everybody before them, demolish every single team and win everything by a handsome margin. Yet they don't seem to click with all those Springboks, all that talent. They just don't work. I mean, they're fourth on the log or third on the log now. Or they're going to probably end up third on the log. Let me make sure. They're fourth, but they're probably going to end up fourth or third. Scarlets, a good team. The one team that the Bulls lost against, even though it was due to a controversial red card that was rescinded later on. The point is, this is not a pushover. What are you expecting from that game?
The problem is that we're talking about the Sharks, and the Sharks, as we've said multiple times, are not good, but they keep winning. Interesting side note to this game is that it's a father-son. John Plumtree, coach of the Sharks, his son Tane is the Scarlets number 8. So I genuinely believe that the Scarlets are a more organized team than the Sharks, and they've got better structures, better processes than the Sharks. But the Sharks just have that player star power. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Sharks win. By the time that this game gets played, both teams will probably know where they're going to finish. So that might mean, but they're not before they name the team. So it'll be interesting to see what team gets named. The Scarlets will go first choice. So the thing about the Scarlets this season is we've seen very, very, very little rotation. Dwayne Peel, the Scarlets coach, has shown clearly that he's only got 25 to 28 players who he really trusts and is really willing to play. Like we've seen regularly this season, him not use all of the substitutes. So that's we pretty much know what team the Scarlets are going to play. And man for man, of course, the Sharks being 80% the World Cup winning Springboks team, you'd say that the Sharks are better. But I think there's if I was giving the Scarlets team talk, I'd be saying, go up against the man opposite you and show how good you are. Like, for example, Marnus van der Merwe, if he's up against Bongi and Benambi, Marnus has said that he wants to be a Springbok hooker. So I'd be saying to him, go on then. There's the guy who's got the jersey that you want. Show that you're better than him. And so on and so forth. The Scarlets have got other players like Sam Lousy's Tongan international, Vea Fafita, former All Black, current Tongan international. He's excellent for us. Centres as well, you need to watch out for the Scarlets, depending on who's fit. Joe Roberts is probably the best outside centre in Wales. The Eddie James and Johnny Williams, the 212s, both excellent players in their own right. Similar but different. Sam Costello, the number 10, in my opinion, should be Wales' starting number 10. He's the best game manager, the best organizer, and he mixes his game up the most: catch, run, pass, kick. And then Blair Murray, the fullback, is a very exciting player. Signed him from Canterbury in the NPC and is already capped for Wales through his mother, I believe, or grandmother, and is a live wire. And the Scarlets back three is the full Wales back three. So Blair Murray, Tom Rogers, and Ellis Mee. You should remember Tom Rogers from such instances as skinning Curtly Arunser.
I remember.
in Parker Scarlets earlier this season. So that's the ones. Scarlets DNA. If the Ospreys are all about forward pack, more if you like the Bulls of Wales, Scarlets are the Stormers of Wales in terms of it's all about
Mm.
flair, it's all about flash, it's all about running from deep, tap and goes in your own half and things like that. So uh, look, the maths on the piece of paper says that the Scarlets are a better team, but the Sharks keep winning. So
Mm.
probably the Sharks to win then.
Well, that piece of paper must be looked at because, how can it be on paper be a better team than the Sharks with all those World Cup winning Springboks, like you just said? I think what you did point out there that you maybe inadvertently put your finger on, and we've been having this debate all over this channel, all over South African channels for that matter, is what's wrong with the Sharks? And you said structures and processes and everything else, Scarlets are actually better than the Sharks. And that points to one thing, and that is coaching. And the fact that the players are, putting the games out of the fire by you know, because of their talent, that points to where the problem lies. You mentioned John Plumtree when you started talking about this. Do you think that Plumtree is the problem? You know him, you know what he's done, where he's coached and everything else. Maybe he's not the right coach for that kind of team.
I think it's possible, obviously him being a Kiwi, is he trying to impose an identity on the team that doesn't suit it? Would he look better coaching in Super Rugby than he would in the URC? I think that's a fair question to ask. Look, I don't think I'll be the first person to say on any podcast that Plumtree is underperforming with the squad that he's got. I think that's inarguable. And exactly, if the problem isn't the players, then what is it? It must be something else.
Now, talk to me about Scarlets. Where does Llanelli, how do I pronounce that? Where does that fit
Llanelli,
in? Say again?
yeah, Llanelli is in West Wales.
Yeah.
It's a very rugby heavy area. It's an area of Wales which is a lot first language Welsh. So obviously, as you move west in Wales, you're getting further away from England, and if you go there, a lot of people speak Welsh as their first language. It's a very, what's the word I want to look for here? It's a lot of small communities. It's not a big city. Llanelli is not a big city. There's 35,000 people live there, depending on which source you look at. And it's quite spread out. It's because of the because of the road networks and things in Wales, stuff that doesn't look very far away can take a long time to get to. And it's rugby mad. It's just absolutely rugby mad. It's not a soccer area. I don't think there's a particularly well-known football team from West Wales beyond Swansea. And yeah, it's I don't know, because I'm so close to it, I don't know how to describe it to someone else. It's yeah, it's just West Wales is like its own little subgenre of Wales.
Predictions for this game. Yeah, Scarlets beat the Lions unexpectedly. They've got 6 on the log now. They've won 9 out of 17, drawn 1, lost 7. 54 points difference, positive. Um, how many tries did they score? How many did they concede? What are you expecting?
Scarlets don't score that many, so we take the most penalty goals of anyone in the league by a lot. So Johan Lloyd is our main goal kicker, has been this season, and he's scored the most penalty. He's scored the most points in the league because he takes this many penalty shots. So we've only scored, I say only, 50 tries, which is only 5 less than the Sharks, to be fair, but it's less than most other teams. I think it puts us lower down on the log in terms of tries scored. But we've only conceded an average of 22 points a game, which is, you got Leinster have only conceded 15, Glasgow 18, Bulls 20, and then we're the next best. So
Hmm.
we're all about being. There's only really 2 games this season that the Scarlets haven't been in, which is Munster away in the URC and Gloucester away in the Challenge Cup. Other than that, we've been competitive. Like we've got 4 losing bonus points this season on top of our 9 wins and 1 draw. So that's 14 out of 17 games we've been either winning or within 7. There's only 3 games that we've lost by more than 7. So there you have it. We're a competitive side. We're a tough side. We're not going to go away. I interviewed one of the players today, and they seem boys. They're very happy about their win against the Lions, and they're going to be excited going into this game against the Sharks, I think.
Have you published it yet?
Yes, it's on the Rap YouTube channel, WRRAP. Kemsley Mathias is the guy. He's a Welsh international loose head.
All right, I'm going to put that link up on the screen here, so people can go click on it and go watch it. It's a good thing. All right, so that's quite interesting. I never realized they were so competitive. But I mean, you don't end up sixth in the log if you're a mediocre team. I suppose that puts it into context a
We
little bit.
probably we probably should be higher because we were leading the Ospreys in Swansea in overtime, and they scored a try in the last minute to win it by a point. Connacht kicked a last minute 3-pointer for them to beat us by a point or two. We've come very close. We could easily have won another 3 or 4 games this season, and that would put us in the top 4. So I don't think the log lies. And again, if you look at points difference, plus 50, is it plus 54, plus 56?
56, yeah.
So there you go.
54, yeah.
Yeah. So, doesn't lie. We are a decent team. Something that kind of been a hallmark of us, at least in the first part of the season, was teams would start the game by going to the corner to try and get try bonus points against us, and they would finish the game by taking the 3 to win the game.
Well, sorry, just give me your forecast for the game. What are you expecting?
Oh, what's the point of being a rugby fan? 24-23 to the Scarlets.
Okay, that would be an upset. Hopefully, we can see some heads roll there at the Sharks. I mean, they need a better coach. Let's be honest. I'll put my hat firmly on that one. Just talking about the other games quickly. A couple of big games: Ulster versus Edinburgh, and then Benetton versus Munster, to make sure who's going to end up. What are you expecting? And then clearly the big game for the weekend, I would imagine, is Leinster versus Glasgow. Talk to me about that Edinburgh versus Ulster game. Edinburgh still in with an outside chance, I suppose. What are you expecting there?
Yeah, so Edinburgh very patchy this season, as we've spoken about before, coached by Sean Everett. Fans not convinced, etc. It's just that the Ulster team that they're coming up against have only won. Well, they've won 7 games, which doesn't look so bad, but Ulster is a team that you'd normally expect to be in the top half of the table. I think they've never been in the Challenge Cup before, so now that they're mathematically out of the top 8, it'll be the first time they're ever playing Challenge Cup rugby next season. They sacked their coach last season. They've been unconvincing at times. They're a team that goes kind of on hot streaks as they go bad. They lose 4 games in a row, then win 4 games in a row. They're quite patchy. They've had a lot of injuries, but I think their season is pretty much fizzled out at this point. And I'd be very surprised to see them to go away to Edinburgh and get a win.
Right, and the other one is Benetton versus Munster at Munster as well at Limerick.
This is the game of the weekend for me. I think this is the big one. So Munster have only won 5 out of 8 home games, which is pretty unheard of for Munster. Benetton have flattered to deceive. They've got 3 out of 8 away victories. Like you said, they got a good win against the Lions down in South Africa, and then they didn't turn up in the next game against the Stormers. Then they got a good home win against Glasgow. But this is a knockout game. For these 2 teams, the knockouts have started now. Lots of Scarlets fans are nervous about them both getting 3 points, about getting a 28 all draw or a 35 all draw, both going above the Scarlets. That would be remarkable, and I won't be happy if that happens. But apparently there's a lot of interest from Munster fans going to this game because this is kind of the knockout starts here and now for these 2 teams. And Edinburgh is the one that they need to look out for overtaking them with an expected victory. So it's tough to call. It's tough to call because Munster have been not great this season, to be honest. Their line out, as I've said before, isn't fantastic either. It's just Benetton aren't that good either, considering they're pretty much the full Italian squad and they're not short of a couple of quid. So for me, this is the one of the weekend. I think if you're going to tune into any URC match as a neutral, Benetton Munster is the one for me.
Yeah, all right. Who do you think is going to take it? My money's on Benetton.
Well, okay, I'll go Munster then. Munster always seem to find a way. God damn.
For me, the game of the weekend, though, is the last one. That's Leinster versus Glasgow Warriors.
I don't think so.
No, I'm just looking, maybe
so.
not in terms of what's going to happen, in terms of the results, who's going to end up where. But scores are settled, being milled by Leinster in the Champions Cup, and not having recovered really after that loss. Glasgow's in a bit of a downward slide, slippery slope. Lots to prove there. I mean, Franco Smith's shares have probably tumbled after that since that loss. I mean, he's not really putting that team together. I saw somewhere someone posted something about no new signings for Glasgow, and a current Glasgow player apparently liked this tweet. I can't remember who exactly it was. Is there something to it? Is there some, trouble in paradise at Glasgow, maybe?
I haven't heard that. I hadn't heard that. Look, I think they've just been absolutely destroyed by injuries at inopportune moments, and then they've had the big Leinster away game in the Champions Cup, I think, affected them, and they've not really recovered since. I think Leinster will go full strength again for this one because they've got nothing else to worry about, nothing else to play for. And I just think Glasgow are looking a little bit done now at this point.
Brittle.
They've not got third place secure. They could realistically be overtaken by the Sharks, but they're not going to go below fourth. They're looking to get a bit of form back into them, but I just can't see them giving Leinster a game, to be honest. So I think this is going to be a bit of a formality for Leinster.
What's your predictions for the top 8 then?
So I'd probably go, look, we know Leinster are going to finish first. I'd probably go Bulls after that. Should be a very straightforward 5-pointer against the Dragons. Probably Sharks, one way or another. Yeah, probably Sharks to go over Glasgow, probably. And then Stormers, one of Benetton, Stormers, Munster, Scarlets, Edinburgh.
Oh, I called Bull Scarlets right in the beginning a couple of weeks ago. Remember that? For some reason, I don't know. One of those.
Yeah,
presentations.
I want to know. I might message someone at the Scarlets afterwards. If we do get a playoff game in South Africa,
Are we
are we going to
stay?
stay down or fly back up and fly down again?
That's a good point. But
Cheaper
it's
to
2
stay
weeks,
down, I would have thought.
It's 2 weeks. You have to stay in a
Yeah.
hotel or something. Where are you going to live?
Yeah, stay in a hotel. When the Bulls come up north, you stay here for about 6 months.
How about it's the Bulls? They've got plenty of money. Multi-millionaire owners.
Yeah, but our money goes further down there.
True, that's very true. You're right. Yeah, they can have a bit of a holiday, man. That's actually not a bad point, though. All right. Okay, that's quite interesting. I'd love to see that plans out. Okay, thanks, man. I appreciate it. That was quite an enlightening conversation. Exactly what I wanted. Thanks.
Okay, cheers, man.
Rugby with Huw Griffin.